all of the problems on that AMI for tomorrow are in the note sheets. We've done all of them. So. All right, guys. Let's look at this here. We only have a few left for 752. Now, one of the first things we need to do in solving this here is to make sure all the denominators are as factored as far as possible. So, yes, x minus 2, 2 terms, no greatest common factor, so that is simplified. The next one, x plus 2, no greatest common factor, degrees 1, that's simplified. The last one, x squared minus 4, is indeed factorable. And it's actually a difference of perfect squares. And it would factor to what? 2 plus x minus 2. So x plus 2 and x minus 2. Restrictions. So the two places where we can get a zero division of 0 is with x plus 2 and x minus 2. For the x plus 2, we can find what value is going to make it be 0. We subtract 2 from both sides, telling us x cannot be negative 2. For x minus 2, we can add 2 to both sides, telling us x cannot be positive 2. So if we get a solution of positive 2 or negative 2, we would throw that solution out. Now, what do we need to multiply through this equation by to get the fractions to go away? X plus 2 and x minus 2. And if we multiply by x plus 2 and x minus 2, well, the x minus 2 and x minus 2 here will cancel. In the middle, the x plus 2 and x plus 2 will cancel. And the last one, x plus 2 and x minus 2 cancel. And what that leaves us with is 9 times x plus 2 plus 6x times x minus 2 is equal to 9x squared. So on that third rational expression, everything we multiplied it by and the denominator simplified out. So that makes it a little bit nicer to work with. At this point here, we can simplify our parentheses and see where we need to go from there. Now here our 9 times x is going to be 9x. 9 times 2 is 18. Positive 6x times x is going to give us positive 6x squared. And 6x times negative 2 is going to be negative 12x. Now at this point here, we can combine like terms. Well, 6x squared doesn't have any like terms. But our 9x and negative 12x are. And 9x minus 12x is going to give us negative 3x. Plus 18 is equal to 9x squared. Now since we do have squared terms, x squared terms, we need to get this equation equal to 0. And we can do that by subtracting 9x squared from both sides.
Picking up on like every other step.
6x squared minus 9x squared is going to be negative 3x squared. Questions on any of this so far? Because again, the first main steps find our restrictions and then multiply through by those factors that are going to get the denominators to cancel. We do that. Now we simplify in here, we get. Yeah. Get it equal to 0. Now we need to factor it. Greatest common factor between negative 3x squared, negative 3x, and 18. Negative 3. Now we want to take the negative out because I want to try to get this first term to be positive. It's going to be easier to factor positive x squared than negative x squared. So we factor the negative 3 out of negative 3x squared, we get positive x squared. We factor negative 3 out of negative 3x, we get positive x. And now when we factor the negative 3 out of positive 18, it's going to take it from positive to negative 6. Two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Since the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. Factors of x squared are x and x. Factors of 6, 1 and 6 are 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 3 and 2. Which one's positive, which one's negative? 3 positive, 2 negative. And if we do check it, these are the correct factors. And if we have 2 or more things multiplied together that equals 0, one of them is going to have to be 0. Well, there's no way that the negative 3 is going to be 0. There's no variable with it. So it's either going to be the x plus 3 or x minus 2. X plus 3, we can subtract 3 from both sides, telling us that x is equal to negative 3. With our x minus 2, we can add 2 to both sides, telling us x is equal to 2. Either one of these are restriction.
Good answer, JP.
Because x cannot be positive or negative 2. So the positive 2 is a restriction. We have to throw that solution out. So the only solution we have for this here is x is equal to negative 3. And that's it. Questions on this here? Two over x minus 1 over 1 over x plus 1 is equal to 1 over x squared minus x minus 2. Our x squared minus x minus 2 will factor to x plus 1 and x minus 2. So that gives us 3 restrictions. Because we have x minus 1 where we could get a 0. And if we add 1 to both sides, it'll tell us that if x is positive 1, we would have a denominator of 0. With our x plus 1, we would have a restriction at negative 1. And x minus 2, we'd have a restriction at 2. So if any one of these 3 or more than one of these 3 show up as a solution, they are going to be restrictions and we have to throw them out. We have to get rid of them. So that means we're going to multiply by x plus 1, x minus 1, and x minus 2. Questions on this here so far? Now as we go through these here, so the first one, the x minus 1 and x minus 1 will cancel. In the middle, the x plus 1 and x plus 1 will cancel. And then the last one, the x plus 1 and x minus 2 is going to cancel out. And what that leaves us with is 2 times x plus 1 times x minus 2. Plus, in the middle, we have x minus 1 times x minus 2 is equal to 1 times x minus 1, or just well, x minus 1. At this point here, I would focus on doing our sets of parentheses, multiplying them together first. There's nothing wrong with doing the 2 times the x plus 1 or 2 times the x minus 2. We can only do it to one of those two. But I would save that multiplication of 2 till after we multiplied our 2 sets of parentheses. So here we can distribute the x. X times x is going to be x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. 1 times x is going to be plus x, and 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Here we're going to do the same thing. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Negative 1 times x is negative x. And negative 1 times negative 2 is plus 2. Guys, let's focus in. At this point here, we can combine like terms. Negative 2x plus x is going to be negative x. Our second one, negative 2x minus x, is going to be negative 3x. Now that we have both of the sets of parentheses simplified down, well, we're going to multiply the first one by our 2. 2 times x squared is going to be 2x squared. 2 times negative x is going to be negative 2x. And 2 times negative 2 is going to be negative 4. And minus 3x plus 2. Combine like terms. 2x squared plus x squared is 3x squared. Negative 2x minus 3x is going to be negative 5x. And lastly, negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. So we multiplied those parentheses out, simplified down on that side, combine like terms. Now, since we still have an x squared term here, we do need to get this equation equal to 0. So what can we do first? We can add 1 to both sides, which will tell us that 3x squared minus 5x minus 1 is equal to x. And then lastly, we would subtract x from both sides, telling us that 3x squared minus 6x minus 1 is equal to 0. Yes. 3x squared minus 6x minus 1 does not factor. But we still have solutions. We just got to use the quadratic formula. And it does match up to our ax squared plus bx plus c. Now for us here, a is going to be 3, b is negative 6, and c is negative 1. So the first thing we have is negative b. So that would be negative 6. And we'll fix that sign here in a minute. Inside the radical, we have b squared. So for us here, it'd be negative 6 squared. Minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 1. All over 2a, so 2 times 3. So to use the quadratic formula, we line up our a, b, c, plug in the values for a, b, and c, respectively. And at this point here, it just starts becoming simplified. Our negative 6 is positive 6. On bottom, 2 times 3 is 6. At this point here, I'd plug everything inside the radical into the calculator. Negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 1. Negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 1 is 48. So it tells us that x is equal to 6 plus or minus square root of 48 all over 6. Now we need to take square root of 48, see what it is. Second square root of 48 is 4 square root of 3. Now this is an answer, but it is simplifiable. And the reason we can see if it's simplifiable is if we look at the top two numbers and the bottom number. So the two numbers on top is we have 6 and 4. We're not so much focused on the radical, but the 6 and 4, and the 6 on bottom. Do all three numbers have a number in common? 2. What we can do is we can factor that 2 out of the top and bottom. If we factor it out of the 6 on top, it reduces it to 3. If we factor it out of the 4, it reduces it to 2. We still have our square root of 3. And if we factor it out of the bottom, it becomes 3. Telling us that we get 3 plus or minus 2 squared to 3 over 3 as the solution for this here. Is that one of our restrictions? No. So both of those are the solution. Not as nice numbers as what we've had up to this point, but it does still work. 2 of the ones on the homework do require you to use the Pythagorean theorem. If you do notice that the 6 plus or minus 4 squared to 3 over 6 does reduce, I'll take it in the reduced form or this form, but I want you to at least get it to there. And for the most part, going from here to here is just more calculator than it is anything else. Questions on this here? All right. This one's not in your note sheet. I'm going to work this one through for y'all. So we'd factor the bottom, and I'll tell you the restrictions for this here is going to be positive or negative 2. So if we get positive 2 or negative 2, those are our restrictions. It's going to cause a division of 0. And as we've been doing, the next thing we'll do is to get rid of the fractions. We're going to multiply both sides by this least common denominator of x plus 2 and x minus 2. And on the fraction on the left-hand side, the x plus 2 and x minus 2 will cancel. On the right-hand side, the x plus 2 and x plus 2 will cancel. And what that leaves us with is 8 times x minus 1 is equal to 2 times x minus 2. Here when we distribute, 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 1 is going to be negative 8. On the other side, we're going to distribute the 2. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Make sure. Nope. That's supposed to be plus 1. Because we can subtract 8 from both sides, telling us that 8x is equal to 2x minus 12. Then we can subtract 2x from both sides, telling us that 6x is equal to negative 12. Lastly, divide both sides by 6, telling us x is equal to negative 2. But isn't that one of our restrictions? So we cancel it out, and since we don't have any solutions left, it is indeed no solution. So it is possible to get no solution. The only way that it will work is that all the solutions that we have for the problem are restrictions. And once we removed all those, we don't have any left, well, then it has to be no solution. It's one of the odd ones or interesting ones that works that way because it is possible to get solutions, they just don't work with the problem. Radicals also have that issue. But that's it. 23 through 26, 29, and 30.